Hey y'all, welcome to Sex Ed for You, the podcast where research meets reality.
I am Lauren, a certified holistic sexuality educator.
And I'm Holland, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Public Health.
Sex Ed for You's podcast is for people who want to date and have great sex that is fun and safe and enjoyable. We like to empower our listeners to make informed decisions that lead to values-based living. Good morning. Hi. Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome back, gentle audience, to Sex Ed for You.
Where research meets reality.
Boy, do we have some research meeting reality today.
I feel like we say that every time.
I do too, but that's why we wanted to do
But
this
it's
podcast.
just so damn true.
It is, because even when flashback to our Zoom calls when I was recording YouTube videos and you were like coming up with stuff, that's why we wanted to do this, is we started having such fascinating conversations about the real-time nature of so much of this research.
Yep.
And it just felt more appropriate. Like, for instance, the podcast that comes out today on this day that we're recording this is about first intercourse. And I think those are the conversations we like to have.
Yeah.
Like the nuance, right? Yeah, we know some of the data, but people get to make their own decisions.
They do.
With their data. So you're making some decisions.
I'm making some decisions.
Gathering
So-
some research.
Yeah, gathering research, but also, oh my gosh, it's just so intricate. This whole situation always has been for me.
And I want you to know, like everything, like you talk as much as you want, as little as you want, get to places where you want to take a pause, right?
Yeah.
Audience, a thing that in the consent world we always talk about is consent can always be revoked. And I think it's important for Holland and I to model that, even in conversation. I was trying to say conversing and conversation. That anyone could get midway through a conversation and say, I no longer feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's just okay. So yeah, I know this story that we're about to go into. Wait for us to tease the audience, but is nuanced. It has many levels for you.
Oh, so many.
So anyway, that's just my disclaimer. Go into as much or into as little as you want to. I'm here to support.
I think, I'm not going to promise all the details, but I think I probably will get pretty detailed because this is such a topic that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah.
We're talking about STIs today.
Whoop, whoop.
STIs, I think, are so poorly represented in this world. We treat them as such a taboo topic, and they're not.
No.
My favorite statistic, which may scare and probably will scare everybody, is that 1 in 3 people has an STI. Most people don't show symptoms. You don't always know whether you have it or not. And 1 in 3 people do. So, yeah, it's scary, but it's also normalizing. And I think we have built so much hype and so much fear around them that getting tested has become such a fearful thing, when in reality, it's so, like, I feel like it's such a thing of pride. Like, you're not endangering the people that you're sleeping with. And the big thing about STIs, sorry, I'm jumping around all the places, but a big thing about STIs from a public health point of view is they're not a big deal. They're really not a big deal unless you don't treat them.
Ding, ding, ding.
If you find out about an STI within a year or 2 of contracting it, you will more than likely be fine. You'll be more than fine. You'll be cured of it, or it'll be completely untraceable. You won't be able to give it to anybody. As long as you get the medication and the treatment that you need, you'll be fine.
Right.
Where the problem comes is when you don't get tested and you have it for 10, 15, 20 years, especially for women, and it can render you infertile. It can really harm your uterus and your fallopian tubes and really, like, build up scar tissue in there. So that's why it's so important to get tested, because they're not a big deal. They're really not, if you get them treated.
I, so often look at the throats that human beings pass around, share the germs they share all the time, such as strep throat. Strep throat's always a perfect example for me, right? Like strep throat, I learned later in life, is from streptococcus, and streptococcus can like kind of latch on anywhere in people. The throat is just a common place, right? A spit flies through the air, you get it, you rub, like when someone gets strep throat, which when I was in kindergarten, I got it 7 times.
Wow.
No one goes, ew.
Yeah.
right? We're like, oh my God, let's get you on an antibiotic and get it kicked out of your system. Usually within 24 hours, you feel rapidly better. You're no longer contagious and you go about your life. And if somebody says, oh, why weren't you at the meeting yesterday? And you say, I had strep throat. No one says, ooh, gross.
Yeah.
Right? They think in their heads, oh, you exist in the world.
Yeah.
You interact with other human bodies. We have gotten rid of the stigma and the shame surrounding strep. Now, what's interesting about strep is strep left untreated can also lead to worser conditions. Some people's bodies can really fight it off with good amounts of garlic and things like this, right? Like they can treat it homeopathically. They're still treating. Yeah. Like we're still interrupting the virus. But left untreated, it can really become bad. One of my favorite stories about this is my ex-husband, I thought, had pink eye. It wasn't pink eye. We were treating it naturally as we would pink eye. It was streptococcus in the eye. My ex-husband is a wedding photographer. It was left untreated because of our ignorance. And when he finally went to an eye doctor, there had been scars that formed on his eyeball. He needs his eyes, okay? Yeah. And they said, like, oh my gosh, we are so glad you came in now because we can give you an antibiotic to start to fight this infection. But if left untreated, this might have taken your vision. Yeah. It's just, and it's just strep. Yep. It's just strep. This is so typical of us with all things sexuality. Yeah. We look at the thing and we shame the thing instead of looking at the more nuanced, broader approach, right? It's not don't have sex so that you don't get these STIs instead of, oh, no, this is how we practice great sexual hygiene.
Yeah. That's genuinely. All. It's just, I look at it as taking care of self, taking care of partner. It's just making sure. Yes. Say like it's just like how you get COVID tested before you go into a hospital and visit your grandma. You know, like it's just precautionary, if anything. Yeah. So I have a very long and intricate story with STIs.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll just dive right in. Welcome to my life.
Welcome to the laboratory, y'all.
So the first time I found out I had an STI was in 2021. I had a bunch of things going on with my body, like hormone-wise. And so I went and got a full blood panel test at my OB-GYN. And nothing, of course, came back about my hormones. But what did come back was a positive test for syphilis. And that was, like, earth-shattering for me.
Why?
I was in a long-term relationship at the time. And I realized that I had probably given it to him. And that it just felt so shameful to me. I had literally only started having sex within 9 months prior to that. So I knew that it was recently contracted. And I was just like, oh my God, like I had sex and like the whole like purity culture thing happened. Like, you dirty girl, of course you got it. Yeah. And so I just like went through that spiral of just like, you're so dirty, you're so gross. But my partner at the time was so kind and loving during that time. He just went and got treated. We both got treated. It was totally fine. After the 2 weeks were up that we couldn't have sex, we just went at it like rabbits again. And we were like, oh my God, I love you. Like, it was wonderful, truly. But it was really stressful. And ever since then, I've been getting tested every 6 months, even if I'm with the same partner. So I got tested again. All was well that time. And then, I just kept getting tested. And the public health department, I always go to the health department to get mine done. It's just the cheapest. When I was in school, I did it at the school health clinic. They typically ask you if you have a positive test, who you've had sex with in the last 6 to 8 months. So you have to like give your people's names and numbers. And it's always anonymous. So you can always feel safe knowing that like, they're not going to know it was you. But you have a responsibility to tell these people that they were exposed.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to kind of get into from a public health angle too, because this is also your angle, which is kind of fascinating. Why do you think there's a responsibility factor there?
Because not everyone gets tested. Yeah. And I think that's important to know. I mean, I was really the only person that I knew in my friend group, in my larger circles even, that was getting tested, that saw the danger in it. And so when you get tested and you have a positive test, if you don't reach out to people and tell people that you slept with, you are essentially letting them go and spread that virus to however other many people.
Right. And again, my strep correlation, right?
Yeah.
If you had strep throat and you had been hanging out with a group of friends the day before, most kind people would zip a text to their friend group and be like, y'all, I am so sorry. I woke up with a raging sore throat this morning. I have strep. I would highly recommend like watching out for it, going like a throat swab, right? And again, there would be no shame. No one would be like, oh, you're gross. Speak to the fact, though, that what the health department does, because if you don't feel comfortable texting sexual partners from the past month and saying, hey, I just got a positive, fill in the blank test, what will the health department do anonymously?
Yeah, they will call, they will send a text, they will do something that says, hey, you have been exposed to an STI. Yeah. They won't even clarify which kind. They will just say, you've been exposed to an STI, please go get tested. Yeah. Here's like a link where you can set up an appointment.
Yeah. So if it feels uncomfortable after you've received a positive test, please know that this is part of public health, is to help spread awareness so folks aren't unknowingly continuing to spread.
Yes, because the spread of it is what's stressful.
Yeah. And can lead to the long-term harm of someone. Again, as Helen so brilliantly said before, it's when something is undetected and unknown and is just building up in your body and left untreated. So please keep in mind, no, there doesn't need to be any stigma about having an STI. It's dangerous for it to build up in somebody's body, and that should feel for all of us. Yeah.
Okay, so we had that one, and then we had a bunch of clear tests, not clean. I don't like using the word clean, but like no positive results.
Yeah. Well, okay, jump in. And I think this is a good point, because I wondered when we'd bring this up. For the longest time, we would all say, first of all, STD, sexually transmitted disease, which everyone's moving to infection. It sounds a lot nicer. And then also, we've all tried to stay away from this "are you clean" type of vernacular. Why?
Because shame, because I already say that enough in my head. Like, coming from someone who has had and contracted STIs before, that vernacular is already going in my head. I'm already, I remember literally there were a couple months where every time I walked past a mirror, I'd be like, dirty, gross, icky. Like, it just was such a low point for me. That changing that vernacular verbally for me was like very important. Because it's not about being clean or dirty.
No.
It's about whether you have a positive test or it's not even about that though. Like,
no.
It's just,
again, in my purity culture studies, I did a lot of study on that type of verbiage, clean versus dirty, and it was fun to do some deep dives into that phrase, cleanliness is close to godliness or next to godliness type of verbiage, and talking about all of these types of clean things. So much of it had to do with separating from different waves of immigrants as they arrived in this country.
Yeah.
And so if you are motivated off of changing the way you speak about things like sexually transmitted infections, know that the origin of us saying things like clean and dirty when it comes to sexuality have disgusting roots. So if you want to be a world changer, start with us.
Yeah.
It starts here. We are not clean or dirty dependent upon if we test positive for something that has to do with our genitals.
Yeah.
Yay, us for getting our genitals checked just like we would a sore throat.
It feels like,
I would not say I'm dirty if I went and got a strep test and I had strep.
It is honestly equally easy to treat most STIs as it is to treat a common cold.
Yes.
It is like a couple pills or a couple shots and you're fine.
No, so just, again, remember the etymology, is that the right word?
I think so.
The history of a word, it's yucky. Just start to dig into pure, clean, all this type of stuff. You will find deep, deep roots into racism, let's strike it from our vocabulary. And that starts with viewing ourselves differently. So I'm proud of you. Yeah. Because walking by a mirror, it is, right? Like so much is like, well, if you would have just saved yourself and only had one sexual partner, right? Well,
which also isn't true.
It's just also not true, but also you could end up doing that like I did and have a miserable life. Like it's just, it's stupid.
Nothing's going to quote unquote save you.
It does not. No. Living a sheltered, protected life doesn't, sure, I didn't get an STI. I got a lot of other shit. Like,
got a lot of trauma though.
Yeah. So I just, whatever. But anyway, I interrupted. So,
no, that's perfect.
Yes, keep going.
So, yeah, fast forward a couple years. I think it was 1 year ago around this time, actually. I had a casual sexual partner. I shouldn't call it that. Sorry.
Good job.
I was talking to somebody and they took advantage of me.
Yep.
I'd had the STI talk with them and they had told me that well, the way the talk went actually was, hey, have you been tested for STIs recently? And they said, what's an STI? And I said, sexually transmitted, like STDs. And he was like, oh, yeah. And so I, in my head, said, that was a lie. And we didn't have sex consensually. And then something happened and ended up contracting an STI from him. I got tested about 2 weeks after because I just knew.
Yeah, you just had a gut feeling.
Yeah, I literally went as soon as possible because there is a waiting period. Usually they have to, like, this is going to sound gross, but STIs need to incubate to actually show up on tests.
Yes.
So I waited 2.5 weeks, went to the health clinic on campus, and I tested positive for syphilis and chlamydia. Mm-hmm. And I went right back down into that deep, dark place. And because at that time, too, I was still struggling with, like, was that consensual or not? Was that rape again? Like, what's happened? I was very confused. And so I had to go through a lot. This is also when I was starting to work with you. And it was just so much chaos. But I ended up having to get treated. And it was fine. Like, it was all was well. Yeah. And
do you mind discussing what the treatment is for something like that? Because I think so often, right, fear comes from a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I think some of us are afraid to even get tested because they're like, but what if I am positive? What then? Please just share.
Yeah, sure.
It's not actually that
so
crazy.
It's different for everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
Most of them are going to be antibiotic pills. And that's going to be doxycycline, which is just, it's honestly such a generic antibiotic. And it's a little harsh on your body.
Yep.
So
I've been on Doxy for a tick bite, for instance.
Yeah. Or for acne, they'll give it for acne. Sometimes it's like a couple steps lower than Accutane. But the thing with antibiotics, to be aware, it will nix out any hormonal birth control. Your immune system will be lower during that time. And you can contract a yeast infection from having those, which I almost always do. So 3 things to be aware of the antibiotic pills. So that was what I got for chlamydia. That was going to be the antibiotic pills. And then for syphilis, they treat you with penicillin. Penicillin shots or bicillin, it's the same thing, just different chemical compound, is a shot that they put in your booty because it's a steroid and it's super thick. And I'm not going to lie to you, that shit hurts. It hurts a lot. But you know what? It hurts less than scarring in your uterus. So I would like not be able to sit down for a day after that. And I had to get 3 doses, and it was every other week or every week. I don't remember, to be honest with you. I've kind of blacked out that part of my life. But it's, every week or every other week, and you have to be consistent with it because otherwise you end up building an infection that is resistant to antibiotics. Exactly. So you have to be consistent with it. If you're doing pills, you have to take them same time, twice a day. If you're doing shots, you have to do them once a week, twice a week, whatever they tell you need to do. You really need to pay attention. But that's it.
Right.
It was, a couple weeks or a few weeks and then fine. I would recommend getting tested again after you go through that treatment to ensure that everything is out of your system. The public health people are probably going to want you to do that anyway. So, yeah, that was kind of all of the STI stuff that I've been through in the past couple years. It's been a lot of chaos. And then...
And then
I moved here. And I want to say a few weeks after I moved here. It was still in August.
And it was warm outside. Yeah, I'm trying to think. We were back from California because we had gone away.
Maybe early September.
Maybe.
Yeah. I got a text from the health department back home. And they were like, it was the text that they give you when someone's been tested. And it was, hey, you've been exposed. Call us and we'll tell you what's up, brother. And so I called them and we went through this whole back and forth of like, I couldn't catch them. They couldn't catch me, blah, 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 blah. So it was a couple hours of like, just shitting myself, to be honest. Because for me, and this isn't for most people, I would hope, for me it's traumatic because the most recent incident that I have with it was from a sexual assault encounter. It wasn't something that I had consented to, and it was a really, really hard time for me. It was not a positive memory. It was not just from consensual encounter. It was hard. It was really hard. And getting that call, essentially what happened was they told me, hey, you were exposed to syphilis. And we have your blood tests from the health department, your health clinic on campus, and you have syphilis. And I was like, actually, I already got treated for that, but thanks so much for freaking me the fuck out. And then they proceeded to keep me on the phone for 30 minutes to talk about my sexual assault. And it was so traumatizing. It was terrible. It was so terrible. I was out of my body for like a week after that because they sat there and asked me where he lived, what he looked like, what he did, what his number was, what his email was, what our relationship had been. And then and this was all after I mentioned that it was sexual assault. And it was awful. It was re-traumatizing. It was stressful because Lauren asked me brilliantly before I hopped on this call, because I immediately went into panic mode when I got that text. And I was with you, thank God. But whenever I got that text and I started panicking, the first thing she asked was, what's your biggest fear? And as someone who lives with a lot of anxiety, that was a really important question to me. I don't know if I've told you this.
No.
That question is literally what I ask myself every time I go into a panic attack now. Like, what is your biggest fear? Because it helps me focus on what the actual outcome can be. And in that day, in that moment, it was HIV/AIDS.
Yeah.
And it still is. Every time it's something with STIs, it's HIV/AIDS.
Yeah.
Because that's scary. And it's expensive. Yeah. It's treatable. It's verging on curable. But it's still scary.
Yeah, and when those texts from the health department come in, as Helen said earlier, they do not specify what they're calling about specifically. They just say you've been exposed.
Yeah.
And give whatever number a call. Usually these human beings are well-versed and know some things, but they're not going to know every piece of the story, which is what's so tricky too, right? Like you and I ascertained by the end of this long phone call that they were probably working through a stack, or through their spreadsheet, and that they were months behind.
Months.
Is what we were like piecing together. Yeah,
because I had been tested in January and they called me in August, September.
Yeah. So they were like calling in reference to, not even about like a sexual partner of Holland's had been tested, and then it was not that. It was like they were calling in regards to her positive result from whenever she had taken care of it herself. Yeah. This was like, it was just odd. And they wanted to make sure she had followed up on, had taken basically to stop the spread.
Yeah.
And I don't think this human being had any wrong intentions. I really do think
they just weren't trauma informed.
No, not at all.
And I believe in trauma informed practices in every facet of life.
it is right of us to assume that people have come in contact with trauma.
Yeah.
And even if the sexual encounter wasn't, it's ethical. I think it is ethical to have a trauma-informed understanding before you're making these calls.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did tell Helen, like, you can say, I don't care to answer any more of these questions at any point in time. But what we all must understand, and we talk about it in this space all the time, is that power is so confusing and consent is so confusing when you're on a phone call like that, because also you're talking to Holland like a public health person, right?
Like I know why they want the
this
data.
Responsibility. Yeah. Yes, she knows why they're asking this data. She knows why they're trying to track where this sexual person had lived.
Especially when it's an assault encounter.
Right? Like they are trying to see where this might be spreading. That is why from that angle they're asking these questions. And yet, let me be very clear. You have no ethical responsibility to answer those. None. Holland did, and that is her choice. And you all have a right to your own informed decisions too. But at any point, you can say, I no longer feel comfortable answering these questions. It's just hard. Like, please hear us. This is why medical systems, health departments need to be getting schooled on trauma-informed practices, because they've got to understand the position of power that they stand in.
Yeah.
And that their white coat syndrome is a thing that we are all like, oh, well, we have to.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we don't have to. Right? Like, you had me sitting there.
Yeah.
Saying you don't have to. And your body felt more comfortable just following through.
Yep.
As it's being traumatized.
Yeah, I felt not comfortable. I felt obligated.
Yeah.
To give my answers, because I do so seriously understand why they wanted to do that. And as I said a few minutes ago, that especially because it was sexual assault.
Yeah.
Because that means that person is more likely to spread it around, because they're clearly taking any opportunity they possibly can to have that type of interaction. And so, like,
yeah. And it's interesting. I'm listening to a holistic psychologist's new book on how to be the love we seek. And she's talking about trauma responses. And let's remember that these trauma responses that we all have are the wisdom of the body, if we're going to use our like crunchy holistic sexuality verbiage. Our body's response to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right, which is people please, are brilliant responses, right? So if Holland's body went to fawn, went to this place of people pleasing, that there is nothing wrong in that. She was getting through to the best way she could. Yeah. And yay, right? Like, is later are her hormones going to rebalance, and is the adrenaline going to bleed and everything fly in a different way? Yeah, it probably is. But to shame someone for going to people please, going to fawn in the midst of that is shit. Like, we can't do it. Like, she was doing a damn good job. She even, like, was humorous.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember you cutting
That's
jokes?
how I get through my pain, is humor. But literally, this lady on the phone asked me, have you ever had a threesome? And I was like, nah, but it's on the bucket list.
Like, in the middle of her answering.
And she's just like cracking up. And I'm like, what? You're asking me about my threesomes after you just told me that I have syphilis. I knew I had syphilis and I already got fucking treated for it. Yeah, I'm going to make a couple jokes, dog. Like, how else do you expect me to get through this?
No, it was so intense. Also, it was hilarious to watch Holland like school this person on like the way, she had been treated, and how, below a certain point, you can explain this to the people, this is going to stay dormant in her body. And it was just,
I know
it was
everything.
Like, you're questioning the wrong person.
Yeah, you really are.
Oh, health department lady.
I know everything that there is to know about syphilis, because I found out it was in my body at the ripe age of 19 and was terrified. So I immediately went into looking, what can I learn? And on top of that, I was a public health major. I had, we talked about STIs in almost every class that I ever took. So I learned about syphilis, and one of the things, let's just dive right into the syphilis fun. The way they measure it is this thing called RPR titer. It's in your blood. It's in your red blood cells. I'm pretty sure. Might be wrong. Definitely in the blood.
Fact check us.
And one of the things with syphilis, is that you will more than likely never fully get it out of your blood. The reason is typically when they're doing these tests, they're testing for the antibodies, not for the actual infection.
Ding, ding.
Similar to flu and cold. That's
COVID.
They're testing for your antibodies, not for the actual virus. So syphilis antibodies are going to be in my body forever. However, they stay at a really low level because they're not fighting anything.
Yep.
There isn't any syphilis to counteract in my body at the moment. So if it's staying below ratio, then there is no active syphilis within your body. For some people, it will go away. The ability to actually find those antibodies in your blood can disappear. I think it's about 50-50 shot. But for most people, you're always going to test positive for syphilis. And what you have to do in that situation, and what I do every single time I go get tested is, hey, I have had syphilis before. This is my RPR titer from last time. If my levels have increased, then you can tell me that I do indeed need to get treated again for syphilis. But if not, please don't scare the fuck out of me again because I'm tired of this. And I genuinely say it that way because I am tired of it. And public health people, I love you. I am one of you. Often they see this stuff all day, every day. They forget how emotional it is for the patient. They see it as, oh, this is just a treatable thing. You'll be fine. You have syphilis. Let's get you tested. Let's get you treated. Whereas for me, it's I've been through this trauma now 2 times. And if you tell me I have syphilis again, my body's going to go into a complete and total freak out. And maybe it will. Maybe I do. Maybe I do need to get treatment again, and that's fine and that's okay. But I don't want to get faked out.
Right.
You know, I don't want them to tell me, hey, you have syphilis, and I don't.
Right.
Because that's going to unnecessarily put me back into a place of trauma and hurt and pain and fear. And if I don't need to do that, then I would really prefer to avoid it.
Is the trauma, pain, and fear connected to the STI or from non-consensual?
I think both.
Okay.
I think it being so tightly interwoven with sexual assault is really scary.
Yeah.
I think it also, because I went through sexual assault at such a young age, I really struggle with even believing that my sexual assault is assault. Right. I was indoctrinated into the thought that any sexual activity with my body is my fault. So being sexually assaulted for a year when I was 15, and then again and again multiple times by different people, and then contracting an STI from one of those, it feels like my fault. It always feels like my fault, even though it's not. Right. It's very much not, and I know that logically.
But the brain and the body, right? Like, body keeps the score, right? These memories, these fears, they live in our bodies. Yeah. And so when we're relaying factual information to this brain, great, but it is falling into our body where this trauma lives, where these experiences live.
This the little 15-year-old old in me that was gaslit every day for a year is still there. Yes. You always say often people freeze at the age of their trauma. Yeah. So that 15-year-old is inside me. I've done so much work to heal her and to help her. But she's still there, especially when specific trauma points come up.
Yes.
And that's one of them.
Yeah.
So that pain and fear and trauma resurface with STIs for me because of the interwoven interconnection that I have between sexual assault and STIs.
Which we would just be fools to think that you are the only one to whom this type of story is connected. Yeah. Which is why so many more clinicians, people who get on the phones for health departments, should be given trauma training. Yeah. Because we'd just be silly. Yeah. Right? Of all of the clients that I get to sit with day after day after day, I mean, you and I say all the time, right, that it's this current stats, I think, are 1 in 4 will experience some form of sexual assault or non-consensual sexual behavior, but that's only those that have been reported. Yeah. Right? I'm trying to think if I have anyone who doesn't have sexual trauma. Anyone.
The numbers are low.
Like, because our bodies, again, these wise creatures, like things are traumatic, and so we need to approach these things with such gentleness. And what I love about this conversation that we're having with Holland is we're seeing it is so little to do with the STI itself, so much to do with the story that the STI is a part of.
Yeah.
Starting with the indoctrination of, things that happen with your body are your fault.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could just go on a rampage about this, right? Yeah. This is why sex education and comprehensive, medically accurate, scientifically accurate sex education needs to start literally in preschool. Yeah. Agency and autonomy over the human body needs to be given to young people everywhere, and not just assumed that it's going to be happening in the homes, because in the homes, the sex education that's happening is just morality education and whatever the fuck the family wants to decide in that moment. Yeah. And so much of it is don't let your body be touched, which is bullshit education. Yep. Because then you have people be touched and they can't come to their family and share. Yep. And it's messed up. And so yes, STI screening, woohoo, right? Like we could shout it from the mountaintop, everybody should get tested, it's no big deal. But I want everybody to hear that no, it's not. And there should be no shame. And I wish we could go back and like erase the whiteboard of everybody's stories. Yeah. But we can't. Yeah. It does come with this other stuff. Yes. And I wish we could shout our STI tests and parade in and out. And I hope that, right? I hope there's a generation that we're helping to cultivate of regular testing and testing in between partners and empowered results and all this type of stuff. I do. And I think we have to be wise enough to understand that there are stories connected to these people going in and getting tested.
Which is why I really want to share my story. Yes. That's why I am so passionate about it. This is one of the topics that's why I'm comfortable putting it on the internet, because I truly tell everyone in my life. There is not a soul that I feel comfortable with that doesn't know about me. This is something that most people in my life are very well aware of, because I think it's really important. And yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. I'm going to get tested today. And I do little things to help myself. I
talk about them, please.
I get all done up, not all done up, but like put on makeup, do my hair, put on comfy clothes. I'm going to go get myself a little treat afterwards. Good. I tell everyone where I'm going so that I know that I have a support system if it doesn't go well. I journal about it. What else do I do? What have I done today? There's honestly, for me, there's not a whole lot that I feel like I can do to stave off the pain, the fear. But those are the things that I can do. And yeah.
I loved the, putting on, in essence, I always talk about it. It's almost like putting on your armor, and I don't like armor. So like, let me think of something else. Like, I don't know if you're going to go out and garden, right? You like put on your favorite overalls. Yeah. And right, like we dress for the thing that we're going to do. And I think that, again, this power dynamic, even though our local health department here is going to be full of sweet little people, like Southern people, it doesn't matter, right? Like our bodies just with medical systems get into these weird places. So yeah, I always like to wear like something really cozy. We know me. I love to be able to keep as much of my own clothing on as possible. Yeah. But I know some people would rather have like their favorite stretchy pants on and then pull them off and yes, wear a paper gown, or if it's just a blood test, obviously that's not a problem. But I think, thinking about the accessibility of, can my sleeves pull up? These types of things, really important. Yeah. Really important, right? What are we getting swabbed? How can we make this so that we stay in our power for as much of the time as we can? Because we can't, because it's one thing we do have control over. That's all. Yeah, I loved your journaling. I wonder if there's space and time to be outside at all. I know how much that helps you. It does. Even if it's car ride with the sun on your face.
I'll probably go down to the little waterfall.
She's found a waterfall close to us.
I'm a water girl.
And figuring out that piece of nature can be really, really helpful. Yeah. Just to cleanse. You know what? Maybe it's this. maybe it's actually giving fucking weight to the thing. Sometimes, do you ever do this? I'll be like, it's just not a big deal. Like, I'll be fine. Like, I can do this thing after.
But it is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? Even when I went to have the ultrasound of my ovaries done, it's a big deal. Like, I needed to cry and rage and have a breakdown in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Is it because it's so similar to seasons of my life where I really wanted to have a baby and couldn't. It was similar to seasons of my life where, like horrible things were happening. I've been in that space, in that type of environment, and my body was remembering the other things.
Yeah.
Right? So let's give ourselves more gentleness. Like, we deserve gentleness.
Honor the body's response.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you and I talk about this all the time, this concept of self-abandonment. Right? I think our bodies want to build trust through trustworthy behavior.
Yeah.
And I think ironically, right, in that self-judgment part of the it was my fault. Okay. Blame is not being put in the right place. Okay. Blame should go on the other person's shoulders. But when we do that, right, we're in essence telling our bodies the wrong message. You are trustworthy. And so by doing these little things like, ooh, body, I'm going to get you a treat afterwards, and I'm going to take you on a special date, and we're going to go sit by the water, we're rebuilding this trust.
Yeah.
You never left yourself. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
But we are saying to the body, oh, I got you, bub. Like, I got you. And I think this, like, not giving it the value, not giving it the space that it is deserving of is just more of the same. It's more of the same self-abandonment. Like, oh, no, I'll just go right back to. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, we deserve it. You deserve it.
I do. I wanted to also talk about what an STI test looks like.
I want you to do that.
I forgot to mention that earlier. So I've been through many of them. I won't lie, many places do it differently, but
I know, that's what I was also going to say. Like, have fun trying to describe because they're so different.
They're always going to pull your blood.
Okay.
Usually they're going to do 2 vials, and that's going to be from your little arm. If you need a snack, ask for a snack. I would suggest always eating before you go too, because if you're getting blood drawn, it's going to be, that pulls out energy. That's your lifeblood, literally. So they're going to pull blood. They're going to ask you where you need to be swabbed. Some techs are not going to be very clear with what that means. Here's what that means. It is a very long Q-tip, and anywhere that you have had genitals on you needs to be swabbed. Mouth, anus, vagina. Those are the 3 places. So if you've done anal, get it done there. It's fine. You also don't have to tell them. Just say, I need 2 swabs, and do it yourself. They'll let you do it yourself. But you need to make sure you're doing it accurately. Right. So if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's okay. But essentially what you're doing is taking this really long Q-tip and gagging yourself with it, like your strep test, like she's been saying. And then vaginally and anally, you just kind of like swirl it around in there.
You're getting the cells.
Yeah,
you
go real deep in there and just little, and then you put it in a little thing and then break off the top of it, put the lid on it, and they test it. And sometimes they'll have you pee, sometimes they won't. Don't know what they use that for, to be honest with you.
We'll have to do a follow-up.
Yeah, I know that swabs are testing for chlamydia, gonorrhea, trichomoniasis, which is crabs.
Way to say it so smoothly. I always just start stumbling over and it's a good trick.
Yeah, trick. All of the like fleshy ones, that's just a weird term for it. But like ones that are going to visibly show up on your genitals, HPV. But typically they're not going to test for HPV because it's so common.
Yeah, that's the other piece that I was going to tag onto this. But you keep going. Yeah.
And then in your blood, they're testing for syphilis and HIV. I think maybe one more in your blood as well, but I'm not certain. So
you can pop up the text on the screen.
I'll put all sorts of text right here over my face
on her face right now. This. And I think, this podcast, I never want this to be the podcast that's like so data driven that it's boring, right? So yeah, enjoy the text on Holland's face, because I think this conversation, I think this is the best part of the conversation. It's okay if you don't remember any of it. Go to the World Health Organization website.
I'm going to put a shit ton of resources
Yeah,
in this.
seriously, there's so much goodness. The value to this podcast, and I'm so thankful, Holland, is that this is the real humanity behind that. Anybody could Google, anybody can, well, they can, and they're going to get sketchy sources. So we're going to put our favorite sources in. But hearing the nuance of this is what I think can happen. Well, if I just had more information, or if I was just more like Holland, this wouldn't be as scary for me. I think when people see folks who have been privileged enough to get education like we have, still have a hard time with these things, it affirms and normalizes their experiences too. We are human beings in bodies. Doing these things with our own bodies is scary. Yeah. And it makes us all feel more loved and less alone when we share this experience. Holland has a shit ton of information in that brain, y'all. I am the most privileged person in the world to have her in the room with me. And this is still scary. Yeah. We've got to normalize that we are all trying to collectively undo the shame and the stigma around STIs. Yeah. And it doesn't really do anybody any help to like be like, oh, just get over it. It's not a big deal. Yes, we've been so like celebrating you doing this test in this season of life, right? Yes, it is the right thing to do. Yes, all these things. Yes, positive sex ed.
It's still scary.
It's still scary. Like it doesn't.
I'm still terrified.
Yeah, it just is. Can we talk about at-home tests? Yeah. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we do.
Because I've gotten to do an at-home test once, and hello, anyone out there in the world, give us a partnership.
I'm your perfect subject.
We
Literally.
Want it. We want it. We would love to talk more about this with a brand that we love and support. So reach out to us if you are such brand. And you align with the values of sex ed for you. We did. We had a brand reach out to us.
Innovated Health Diagnostics.
What, like 6 months ago?
Longer.
More? Okay.
It was probably February.
Wow. Time flies. Anyway, but it's before Holland was here, and yeah, I did it. And I shared with the world then, and I'll share it again. I had never done an STI test until this point. So with Lauren's, here we go, brief sexual health history, I had not gotten married and not had sex until I was married at 21, and then had that one sexual partner for a decade. And yeah, in that monogamous relationship, had no reason to be testing. And some people will say, and I will always say this, that you never know the truthfulness of your partner, right? So some people get tested even inside of monogamous relationships, and I highly encourage it. I do. I was just living, remember, in a different world where, yes, all of that, shame, stigma, all of that in there. Then when I got out of that relationship, I only had a few sexual partners. I abso-freaking-lutely should have tested in that season. Did I? No. That's my bad. That is really my bad. Thankfully, it was few and far between, but it still should have tested. And so then had been in this monogamous sexual relationship with my now husband, but was like, no, this is a great opportunity, because what if one of these sexual partners from before did not share? I knew that I had gone into the original encounters without anything, but I didn't know. So Innovative Health Diagnostics sent us an at-home test. And with this one, it was just a finger prick. And they sent like swabs and alcohol things and all these types of things. And you prick your finger once, you drop it in a certain circle until the blood fills up. Then you do another sheet kind of for like possibility of error. Then you put them in, like a fun, fancy, like healthy bag. And
it says like biohazard on it.
It's like very official. And then you put it in this like prepaid mailer and mail it off. Oh, and there's like a QR scanning code. So you put all your information into this little, I don't know, website. And then you get a text when they get the bag and they say that we've received it. You'll have your results within, I think it was 2 to 3 days. And I think they got the bag in 2 days. And then 2 days later, I got a text saying, hey, your results are ready. And you click the link that's in the text and it goes to your results. And this results said that I did not have any of the things that they tested for. No positives had shown up. So yay for the sexual partners that I had not but But these were the pros. The pros were, it was in the safety of my own home, right? There was no, like, I felt in charge. I felt empowered. And the quick, like, the speediness and, like, the anonymity in it, getting to stay in my own clothes, all that felt good. Cons were, obviously, there was no swabbing. Like, and that also... Yeah, there is room for error, and you and I have talked about this, right? Like, I don't know, that type of thing. And then the other con was the cost. Like, this one was pretty pricey, which is, again...
$160. That one was $160. They're usually going to average around $120.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not going to lie to you, is actually accurate for how much it costs to run those tests.
Yeah, it was not more expensive than going and getting it done locally.
At a doctor.
Yeah.
If you go to your health department, usually it's going to be a sliding scale, and it's cost me around $30 before to get it done. Yeah. So, which
they want to make it accessible. So literally what health departments are for. And in some cities, there's like clinics on every corner where you can go and get an affordable test, which I would hope, right? Like that would really be a wise thing for every city to have. We have some places here in town that just have longer waiting lists, which just isn't very helpful.
No, but there's only so much they can do. True. And then treatment depends on where you are or what it is. I think my treatment for syphilis depends on how many installments you need to do. My doxycycline was $7 because I use this thing called GoodRx. It's coupons on your phone. I got it at Walmart. It was $7. So if you end up getting doxy, use that. And then for the bicillin, which is the shots, it was 3 doses, and I believe it was $120. And that was at the health clinic on campus. So I think it was a little bit cheaper because it was there. But most places take insurance. Yeah. I just don't have insurance. So
she will sue.
I will sue.
Virginia has a marketplace. It'll be fine. And if Innovative Health Diagnostics had found the presence of any STI that it was testing for, that was the thing. It also, the panel was not that comprehensive. They would have referred to like a certain clinic in my area that would have prescribed, right? The downside of doing something like that is that, you're not going to get like your prescription mailed to you, which would be super handy too. Yeah. But it isn't as easy as it could be, right? There are some things that could be easier. But I really do think that it's conversations like this that continue to normalize the process. Can you talk about, from a sexual health, public health background before we close out, how often people should get tested? Like, and thoughts behind that?
Absolutely. So every 6 months, period, is going to be your flat answer. Okay. You really should, even if you are in a monogamous relationship, because as Lauren said, you don't always know if people are being honest to you. I really hope they are, but... If not, every 6 months is truly going to be your prime number. And more often, if you're switching sexual partners, in between every single sexual partner would be my recommendation. Condoms only protect against so much. Yeah. They really, because if you think about, the condom covers the shaft of a penis. It does not cover the mons pubis. It does not cover that bone, that pubic area, and that is where trick lives. That is where HPV lives. That is where... what is the other one? Anything that's like actually on your skin. Right. That's where it lives, is on your actual pubic bone, not on the shaft of the penis typically. Also, you're more than likely to get STIs from semen, from cum, because that's where all the bacteria lives. So if you're trying to avoid it, you need to be oral sex with a condom, sex with a condom or a female condom, which is actually more likely to help you abstain from STIs because it's got more coverage on the vulva. And what else was I doing there? Oh yeah, in between your partners, but just really as often as you can or feel comfortable. Every 6 months at bare minimum, to be honest with you.
Right. And if that's the case, again, oh country of ours, we should make this easier for everybody.
Make it free.
It should be free, and it should be so accessible and so positive, right? I dream of this day where, we are celebrating people taking their own health and their own sexual flourishing in their own hands. That it's not, we go and get tested when we have a symptom. It's, no, this is my every 6 months protocol. This is, I'm, sexually active. And so in between partners, I'm doing this. It just makes so much sense. And I envision this sex positive world that's like, way to go. Right.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to guess that you're the most sex positive person in your friend group. So you're probably like me, which in that case, when I was in college, what I did is I would gather all my little friends and I'd be like, I will buy you a coffee. Let's go get STI tested together. And I would do it, and I would take like one person or two people, or I would even go with them when I didn't need to go get tested. But like, if you're the person in your friend group who's most likely the most responsible in this topic, I love you. You're probably the most likely to get your friends to do it. Be the public health person that they need. Truly. I really would love that if you did that.
Yes.
It's so you're protecting your friends. Truly. You are helping them.
And it can be from an angle of celebrating their sex lives,
Yes.
right? Like if you have a buddy who broke up with someone and is now flirting and moving to, right, a sexual relationship with someone, now's the time,
Yeah.
right? Buy the coffee,
amazing.
go on a friend date, and get an updated test so they can get that good lovin' and feel good about it.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to do this from a sex negative angle. We can do this from like this exciting, like, let's get you that D angle. Not, I don't know, like shame. Why? No. Let's do this like, then let's all celebrate it.
And then you can go have dinner.
So let's change the narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that there are ways to do that. If you want us to celebrate you going and getting tested, or going with a group of friends and getting tested, like, please reach out to us.
God,
Like,
send us pictures.
Please send us pictures on social. Like, we are here to celebrate you.
Yes.
Like Colin said earlier, your local health department is probably going to be your easiest and most affordable bet, but there are lots of online options as well. Google at-home tests. Your local doctor's office should be able to do it. If you have a standing primary care physician, they can do it there too.
Yeah. Yeah, you can always ask about cost transparency. They are obligated to tell you.
Yeah.
And if you tell them you don't have insurance, guess what? The number is going to go down.
It is. And you're going to be paying out of pocket, and often it's cheaper.
Yep.
So, like, I know that this is a lot of, like, hoops to jump through, so please hear me. I remember thinking when I got into maternal health work before this work, this is so much work.
Yeah.
Like, to get the resources, it is so much work, and it is ridiculous, and we are here to stand with you and say that. So if you need people to cheer for you after you also jump through all the hoops, please know we are in your corner, and we will cheer for you. Send us messages on Instagram. It's sex_ed_for_you. Yes, we know it's hard to find. It's ridiculous. We should pop up at the top, but thanks to this world for being
shadow
sex
banned
negative and shadow banning us. But we are there. Anything else before we close out? Oh, sexual health goddess. I'm gonna make her shirt.
I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you, and I'm really proud of me.
We're all really proud of you. Yeah. I look forward to hearing how the experience goes today. I really do, from like a nerdy angle, but also from a you angle, because I think every time you do this, you are doing it from a more empowered place.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing our brains will try to trick us into. It's like, you're that little 15-year-old again. It's like, no, fuck no.
Yep.
Like, she is powerful and in control of her health, and so are you. So thanks for being here today, y'all. And as always, remember that you get to make your own informed decisions. This is a conglomerate, yes, of research and opinions and all of these things that Holland and I have, and they are a result of our lived experiences, especially topics like this. So we encourage you to do your research. Go into the captions and into the show notes and click the links. Do the research for your area. Think about what is best for your body. You have a right to self-determination. If you ever need help with this, you are welcome to schedule a free consult to see if individual sexuality education would be good for you. You can go to www.sexedforyou.com/free consult and put in there what you're working on. Holland would be the first to say that just talking about something like, where should I go for an STI test? That's not the type of long-term sexuality education that we do. But if you're like, wait a second, I have a lot to work on, I want to go through my story and figure out how to be a more sexually empowered human, that's the type of work we do.
Yeah. We don't offer medical advice.
No. I'm a holistic sexuality educator. You don't want my medical advice. You want to talk to your doctor. You want to talk to your midwife. You want to talk to your OBGYN. There are many other qualified people out there to be talking to. Might we point you to research? Sure, but you're welcome to just reach out to any of our other forums to do that type of thing. Anything else?
Buy our merch.
buy our merch. Get yourself a Pleasure is Your Birthright Claim It t-shirt. Get yourself some stickers. Get yourself a tote or a hat. We got good stuff.
Yeah, we do.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.